Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cinephiles podcast. It's going to be just me talking. Some of these will happen where I'm going to just kind of talk with you guys and you can listen to my good voice. I don't know. It's not great, but I just thought, this would be a great opportunity for me to do some blabbering. And we have a lot to talk about because for people who don't know me, Superman's a big deal in my life. It's probably my favorite thing of all time. It is my thing. I've always loved Superman since I was a kid. He's my favorite superhero. He's my favorite piece of literature. He's everything. So we're going to have a long, hopefully not too long, but a kind of a rambly discussion. I have some notes here. I don't normally take notes, but I thought I'd lay down some bullet points at least so I can stay on track with you guys this time around because I have a lot to say and I'm kind of going to just vomit my thoughts on a lot of things. So just bear with me. I don't have a lot to say about a lot of topics and a lot of things. I have my beliefs and I have all of the things that I, care about and stuff. And I can get into some deep conversations about a lot of things, but this is something that I for sure have a lot to say about. So let me indulge myself a little bit here and hopefully you guys find it a bit interesting. The Cinephiles Podcast. So we're going to talk about Superman, and the reason we're talking about Superman right now is because the teaser for the newest Superman movie was released on the 19th, and it's a big deal. For some people who follow Superman and for some people who follow comic book movies and things like that, you kind of know why. So I apologize if I kind of retread some water here if you already know some of this information, but I thought it'd be really interesting to not only kind of give my opinions on this movie and so far and on this teaser, but I also wanted to give my opinions on Superman as a franchise, a movie franchise. I'm a massive comic book fan outside of movies. I've had a pull list since high school, weekly pull list. I go and pick up my issues. I have so many between Marvel and DC, but I'm a big DC guy. And I thought it'd be important to kind of discuss it for people who maybe go, so why are we rebooting this again? Why are we doing another Superman movie? I don't really get it. Didn't we just have a Superman movie? Didn't we just have this? Isn't this actor playing Superman? Let me kind of pave the way for you to kind of understand why this is a big deal and also why we are seeing this happen so many times, right? And then I will give my thoughts on the trailer, which is also important. I won't give my opinions on the trailer until we discuss that part. Let's break it up first with kind of a history lesson and then a little bit of a, Jay's opinion piece. So let's take it back to 1978, right? Superman the movie came out with Christopher Reeve. It's what a lot of people have seen. Classic. Poster behind me. Everyone's basically seen it. It's one of the biggest movies of all time. It broke so many records back in its day, and it was a big success. And we moved on and did the sequels. We had Superman 2, 3, and 4. I won't go into deep detail of those because I think that'll be saved for another podcast in the future. We will have more Superman podcasts, I'm sure. Essentially, we had Superman 2, 3, and 4 after that. And then we had a huge break with Superman movies. We would say Superman went into development hell, essentially. It was a lot of different directors taking it on, having an idea, a concept, and then that concept kind of dissipating. And Warner Brothers is a really fickle production company. They have had a lot of issues with kind of keeping track of what they want and what the fans want and what directors want. And you have pretentious directors who want to, change the formula. You have some directors who want to stick true to it. You have some directors that are kind of in between. We've had a movie with Kevin Smith he was going to do called Superman Lives back in the 90s. That turned into something with Tim Burton and Nicolas Cage that never happened. Then it turned into something, we've had multiple in between too, but then we had something with McG directing and J.J. Abrams. Superman Flyby is what it was called. And it was going to be kind of in the early 2000s. They were going to do that. They were going to do a Batman and Superman movie before the Batman and Superman movie that came out happened with different directors and different control of creative differences and things. So we've had a lot of moments where Superman was going to happen again, and then it didn't. Then we got Superman Returns, which was directed by Bryan Singer. And that one was kind of a love letter / reboot / kind of, it's in the same universe as the Christopher Reeve movies. They use the same music. They use the same everything with that. You kind of is supposed to be a Superman 3 that is retconned and it's a mess, but it was very, very expensive, and it had lukewarm reviews, and it just did not make the money that they wanted and what they expected. They had to kind of course correct again. That was 2006 when that movie came out. Then we had a lot of other rumors of more stuff happening, a Justice League movie, a lot of stuff. And moving forward again, this is where we go into Zack Snyder territory. Zack Snyder, who directed 300, Watchmen, many other movies too. Those are kind of his big claim to fame movies, though, before Man of Steel, which is the poster also behind me, with Henry Cavill. That was 2013. And this is where they said, we're not going to do the Richard Donner, Christopher Reeve Superman type. Let's make him a little bit darker. This was after The Dark Knight. This was after the Dark Knight trilogy, especially. Dark Knight Rises happened like less than a year before Man of Steel came out. And so, there was a lot going on with that, and there was a bit of a hype because there was kind of this nice new feeling of a reboot, right? When I saw it, I liked it, and I thought it was pretty good, but it was very different. It was very dark. Superman was very burdened. He didn't really want to be Superman too much. He had you got a lot of Dark Knight influence into that. They wanted to ground him, make him more realistic, saturated colors, the whole shebang. And, but that was a pretty good success, and everyone was pretty happy with it. A lot more action, a little bit more fast paced. People liked Henry Cavill, so they moved on to Batman v Superman. Batman v Superman went a whole other direction, kind of in the same direction as Man of Steel, but just like times 10. It was very dark. Batman was very dark. He killed. Superman was dark and depressed, and he didn't like doing this, and he was burdened, and many people didn't like it. And it showed in not only the reviews, but kind of in the money. They didn't make as much money with it. And at the same time, Zack Snyder was also directing Justice League. It was being shot like right in that same era, the area of when Batman v Superman was like premiering. He was essentially directing Justice League. Well, he partially through it ended up having to leave due to a tragedy in his life, and they had Joss Whedon come in and take over. And that's when that Justice League movie came out that a lot of people have seen and a lot of people don't like, or a lot of people haven't seen. And that movie is a very stark difference to your Batman v Superman or your Man of Steel. And the reason is because the director changed, and they were like, we need to just like inject brightness. This is what people want. They don't like the dark anymore. They want it to be light. Let's just take a movie that was already pretty much filmed and just make it lighter. So we're going to up the saturation. We're going to add some quips here and there, make it very Avengers-like. We're going to have some stupid jokes. We're going to have, stuff like that. And it was very like disheveled. It was just like a Franken movie of a lot of ideas and production companies and people and writers and everyone trying to like remold something that was halfway done and had a really very, very vivid vision. That movie bombed essentially, and they didn't know what to do. It was a mess. Well, that's when the Snyder Cut was released, the Zack Snyder Cut that you'll see on HBO Max, the 4-hour version of Justice League. Definitely something that was much more focused and made more sense, and the story was better and all that. It was much darker, and it was very long. And they released that more because the fans wanted it, because there was a huge petition from a lot of people who wanted to see that finished. And it was great to see that actually, come to fruition and have, its own feet to stand on. And you could see the differences in the movie and how it was more focused. I'm going through this a little bit as fast as I can, because it's a lot, right? The Snyder Cut came out. It also was a success on Max, and it kind of split the fan base. You have people who love Zack Snyder's art. They love his directing. They love where he was taking the story. The Justice League cut he did had a lot leading into a new, a new sequel of movies that kind of had a huge epic story, and people really wanted to see that. At the same time, Warner Brothers was struggling, and Warner Brothers was, owned by AT&T, and they had a lot of management changes because there was a lot throughout, not just the superhero genre, but everything else, whether it was the Wizarding World or whether it was just their regular movies. They had some moderate hits. They had some movies that won Oscars, and then they had a lot of flops. They had these huge franchises that held the entire thing up and paid their bills that they could not get successful. And so they, out of bankruptcy and many other things, it was sold again to Warner Brothers Discovery. And when that happened, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav, kind of took over and took the reins and had a very, a lot of people don't like him because of a lot of the things he's done. Oh, that's a whole other story. But trying to cut it down, essentially, he was like, this is our focus. This is what I want. I care about Superman. I think Superman's an important character. We're not utilizing him properly. So we need to clean house. Well, at that same time, Black Adam was coming out, which if you don't know what that movie is, I don't blame you. It didn't do well either. I really liked it, but it was The Rock playing Black Adam. He wasn't really accurate to the comic book character. It was really just The Rock making his own superhero. But at the end of that, you saw Henry Cavill Superman and the prologue after the end credits, and they played like the John Williams theme, and it was a big deal. And then Henry Cavill announced, I am back as Superman. Basically, I got a deal. The Rock is going to basically help me get in this. We're going to do another Superman movie. I can't wait. I loved Henry Cavill. I thought he was fantastic. But he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was just something that he aged out of, unfortunately, and I think they wasted his time there because the Superman idea from Zack Snyder was this whole mythos that I'm creating. By the end of it, he will be the Superman you want. Right now, he's the Superman that's learning to be Superman. Well, we can't wait a decade for that to happen. Unfortunately, we can't. It just, Henry Cavill's going to age out and people are going to get bored. And that's kind of what happened. And so, The Rock was like, I'm going to take over DC. I'm going to do the Black Adam movie. It's going to go like gangbusters, and I'm going to bring in Henry Cavill, and then we're going to talk about us fighting, and he's going to get a movie. Well, that didn't really happen because Black Adam was a failure as well. So, there were a couple other movies coming down the pipeline with that universe. The DCEU is what they called it. You had a Shazam 2, which the first one was a huge success, and it was actually a surprise for a lot of people. You had Aquaman 2, which made billions of dollars overseas, which was a big success for Warner Brothers with Jason Momoa. And you had a lot of other movies that they were kind of throwing in there. And when David Zaslav took over from Warner Brothers Discovery, there were some movies that he cut, like a Batgirl movie that was being made already. You had the Flash movie, which got a lot of Frankenstein moments in it because they had many different people going, what direction are we taking this? It was going to be a soft reboot. It was going to lead to a whole other thing. And in the end, they kind of just left it the way it was because they didn't really want to use it for their universe anymore. Essentially, David Zaslav said, we need to start over. And there comes James Gunn. James Gunn, the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. He's also, he was a lower budget director for the longest time up until then, a writer as well. Fun fact, he wrote the Scooby-Doo movies, the live action ones from the early 2000s. And he did the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, which were fantastic. Everybody loved them. They were some of the biggest surprise hits of the Marvel universe. And when Guardians 3 was being written, long story short, he got fired for things that controversial, but also very unfair. A lot of just jumping to conclusions, and Disney didn't want to get in trouble and deal with it, so they fired him. Well, while he got fired, DC said, hey, you want to do a movie for us? And he said, sure. And they said, what do you want to do? And he thought about a Superman movie. And then he thought about, no, I don't think I can handle that because he does more R-rated stuff, and he does a lot of, stuff that's a little more raunchy, things like that. And he said, why don't I do a Suicide Squad movie? Well, they already did a Suicide Squad movie. He said, well, I'll just, make it a soft reboot. I'll just do, some of the characters from that first movie that came out back in 2014 or 15 or whenever it was. And I'm going to add some of them, and I'm going to do my own flair to it. Well, he essentially did an R-rated Guardians of the Galaxy Suicide Squad movie that had more lore and great, accurate costumes and characters and cinematography that you hadn't seen in the DCEU. And it was not a big success due to COVID and due to, marketing, but it was reviewed very well. And so they said, we like this. Disney goes, wait, we apologize. We're so sorry. We shouldn't have fired you. Do you want to do Guardians again? So for James Gunn getting fired by Disney, he ended up getting 2 gigs. And then in the end, he ended up getting even more, which I'm getting to. He ended up kind of taking everything. He did Suicide Squad, and then he did Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He also did a Peacemaker spinoff from his Suicide Squad universe. And that was the HBO Max series that he did that also got good reviews with John Cena. So he went and did Guardians 3, which ended his trilogy. Brilliant, wonderful, touching, well written, well directed, well acted, everything movie. Came in under budget, came in. He just has a really lean and mean way of directing movies and getting things done. So Zaslav basically saw what he did with the universe, the little bit he was there, and he said, you're done with your Guardian stuff. Do you want to run DC movies? And James Gunn said no. And it took until his producer friend Peter Safran also joined in for kind of the business side while James Gunn did the creative side. And he said, you know what, I will do that. Well, this put them in a weird position because James Gunn was excited to do this, but he also didn't want to keep the DCEU. It was a decade at this point. It was failing. Every movie got bad reviews. It wasn't making as much money as the last. It was just kind of the joke of superhero movies, right? And he ended up just kind of saying, this is what we're going to do. So this is where James Gunn comes in. And, they finished off some of these movies that they were already working on the best they could. James Gunn didn't have a whole lot to do with that. And then he kind of jumped in and said, all right, let's get started. So he started his own universe with a lot of ideas, but a lot of things that he said will not get approved until I approve the scripts, until the scripts are exactly the way they need to be before we can start filming them. We're not just going to say, this is a cool concept, let's do it. Here's, billions of dollars and you go do it. And then you don't know how it turns out. He needs everything to be kind of ready. So he started with writing. He got into kind of writing a Superman script. And he said, I'm not going to direct it, but I do have a good idea, I think, of Superman. He said, I don't think I can handle directing a Superman movie. Well, he wrote it. And then eventually he said, you know what? I am directing it. I think I figured out a way I can make this work. He met with Henry Cavill and said, I'm going in a different direction. We're starting a new universe now. And, I have some other concepts that require Superman to be younger. And so Henry Cavill, unfortunately, got dealt a really bad hand where he was kind of strung along for 10 years. They didn't really love him there due to his love for the character, and they disagreed on a lot of things. And then they also, he just kind of got left in a really weird place. And he finally thought he was coming back with The Rock. The Rock kind of ditched everything because his stuff didn't work. And then James Gunn came in. And the reason I tell you all this stuff is because it's very important to this whole situation. Because you have, like I said before, a split fan base now. You have people who love the Zack Snyder stuff with Henry Cavill, and then you have the new James Gunn stuff. And you have some people who are like, I love the take they took with Henry Cavill, and I love how they made it more grounded and darker, and I thought it was more epic. And then you have some people who said, I miss the light Superman. I miss the Superman from the comic books who was hopeful, who, was campy in the best way possible. He just was true to himself. Well, what's so wrong with being a big blue Boy Scout, essentially? What's wrong with inspiring hope through kindness and love and light? So you have these two fan bases and they just cannot get along. And it's still to this day a problem. You still have people who you will see in the reviews for this new trailer for upcoming things. Anything James Gunn does, they're going to just bash him because they still stick true to that universe. And while they're valid, I have moved on, and it's impossible to negotiate with those people. You got to embrace the future and respect the past. And even Henry Cavill now has moved on, and he has his own stuff he's working on, such as the Warhammer universe over at Amazon. He's working on Voltron. Like, he has stuff to do. And, unfortunately, he just, like I said, was in a bad time to play Superman. It was a bad time. It was a scary time because there wasn't much going on with him, and they weren't sure what they were going to do. And it felt like they were never going to make another Superman movie again, and we're going to be in development hell for another, 30 years. So here we are now, and James Gunn has been directing. It was originally called Superman Legacy, and it is now just called Superman. And I've been following it since, he announced he was taking over DC Studios, which, by the way, DC Studios, compared to the DCEU, which now it's DCU, the DC Universe, is its own thing from Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers, foots the bill, and they have, the final say in the high-end stuff. But they said, basically, James Gunn, go do what you feel is necessary to make this work, which is exactly what Marvel's been doing. They've been, their own studio separate from Disney. We have this now at DC. And instead of, them fighting with Warner Brothers over, we need this, we need that, mind you, like the Joker Folie à Deux, which is the sequel to the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, it's not doing well. Well, it doesn't have a DC Studios tag on it because James Gunn was like, I don't know how I feel about this. From what we can tell, he's like, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know if I want to be a part of this. I don't really believe in it. And so it doesn't have that tag. And Warner Brothers is, it was exclusively with DC and Warner Brothers, but it's kind of its own thing. And there's stuff that James Gunn has put his DC Studios logo on, such as the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary about Christopher Reeve's life that they purchased, and he has the tag on that because he believed in it. He has the DC Studios tag on The Penguin, which is a spin-off series of The Batman, which The Batman came out before Discovery bought Warner Brothers. The things he believes in, he's now bringing in for his universe, and the things he doesn't believe in, he's kind of stepping away from. Getting to Superman, it is now finished filming, and the teaser trailer came out. And let's talk about it. As of right now, it is the most successful DC trailer, Warner Brothers trailer, post-COVID. Meaning it has the most views and in all of its platforms. And there's a chance it's probably going to go surpass that. It's been just over, almost 2 days, I guess, at this point. But it's huge. If you haven't seen it, I would say go check out the Superman teaser trailer before you watch the rest of this, because I'm going to talk about it. And it's kind of important. Getting into my opinions now. I am very excited for it because I am on the side of Superman is a symbol of hope. He is a symbol that represents a lot of things, but the thing he represents most is he's the best of humanity, even though he's an alien. He understands humans more than anybody else, and he inspires people to be the best version of themselves they can be. And in the darkest of times, he's the one that leads the pack in saying, there is a better tomorrow. We haven't really seen that, especially in the most effective way, in decades. This dark take on Superman has been kind of taking over everything. When you watch something like The Boys, Invincible, the version of the Justice League and the fighting game Injustice, Gods Among Us, Superman is kind of a tyrant, or it's a character that is like Superman, that it's like, what if he was corrupted and evil? While that was an interesting concept 20 years ago, it's tired now, and we need to move on. We need to get back to the really hopeful Superman that people need, especially right now. This is a very important time to have a pure version of Superman. I really think this is a really unprecedented time in our history. A lot of people are scared. It's dark. There's a lot of distrust amongst everybody, division, anger, fear, sadness. And the whole purpose of Superman is to help guide people to the right direction and come together for hope and peace. It started in the 30s when he first was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. They were born from two Jewish immigrants, and they settled in Ohio, and they were dealing with things such as the Great Depression, World War I, leading into World War II, and their way of coping with the scariness of life back then was creating a character as writers and artists that inspired them and made them feel better. Someone they wished really existed and could inspire people across the world to do better. And so they created Superman. This is kind of mirrors, it's kind of the histories of the past repeating itself. We're just at another point in our history where things are really dour and sad right now. And the last thing we need is cynical Superman and cynicism in general. And so to have, the purest version of Superman we can find, I think is important. And that's what James Gunn's doing, regardless of his directing style, regardless of how the movie's written, regardless, dialogue wise, regardless of anything cinematography. This is a big deal. And this movie is not only a big deal for fans of Superman, it's a big deal for the future of superhero movies. It's a big deal for I think it can inspire people outside of just movies. It also has a lot weighing on it due to the struggles that the DC brand has had in movies for the better part of a decade. So there's a lot riding on this movie. And so the fact that it's getting a lot of buzz is good, and also it's expected, because everyone wants to know what's the next step here. Everyone's so used to Marvel, which has been great. DC's kind of been, it was the OG here, and it's struggling really bad. And the characters are struggling, and the people in charge are struggling, and the studios are struggling, and all this. So we've had some time to breathe, and we've had some time to, kind of wait for what the next steps will be for this franchise. And here we are with Superman in 2025 that comes out July 11th. The first teaser. I didn't cry. We talk about the cry counter, like with Wicked and stuff, because I cry at movies. I didn't cry my first time or the many times I watched it. I've watched it hundreds of times probably at this point. I didn't cry. I got choked up here and there. I will probably cry in the actual movie, but I did cry while I watched other people watch the trailer and cry. So I sat there kind of seeing what people's thoughts were today, and I was watching videos of people, just normal people who aren't huge Superman fans, and people who are superhero fans, or some people who aren't superhero fans, and they, posted their reaction to the movie and the teaser, and they had these genuine just collapsing into literal tears watching it. I don't mean to sound overly dramatic when I say that, but it made me cry too, because it's working. The message that we need right now is working on people. It's proving this is what we need right now. We need to inspire hope, and we need to inspire the newest generation too. I mean, sitting here and wallowing in the mistakes that we've made as a country or as a world or as individuals, we got to think about the people who are up and coming. I mean, I have a newborn, and it's something that I think about all the time, where I'm like, and I thought about it before then too, where I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and just feel like this is the end of the world, because we still have people coming up looking to be just as excited to be a part of this world and be successful and happy as we were. And just because it's not working out for us, we can't leave this world with the new generation having nothing. We need to inspire, and we need to come together and bring hope. Like it or not, movies inspire. Movies always have inspired, and they've brought out feelings of people that maybe they don't find themselves in the regular world. And so to have this movie come out at this time is very important. And to see these people watching this trailer and crying, it made me cry, because I'm like, this is, someone's finding, the people are seeing what I'm seeing after all these years, after being such a big fan of Superman, and, finding, the niche group of people that agree with me. There's a massive audience of people who have been looking for this, and they didn't even know it. And so now they're sitting here crying because it's a catharsis for them to feel heard and feel like there is a ray of light somewhere in this world when it's really dark. So I've talked about a rundown of the history of the Superman movies and kind of why the franchise is messy. And when you see people going, well, that's another Superman movie. I'm so sick of the Superman movies. There's another Superman movie with an origin, and it's, he's Superman. This is why. For people who love this stuff, it's been rocky. It's been up and down. People have been waiting for a lot of things that haven't happened yet. Let's go through the actual trailer now a little bit, shall we? So David Cornsweet is playing Superman, Clark Kent. David Cornsweet is 20. He's 31 years old, probably approaching 32 at this point. He's about my age. He's an actor from America that hasn't been in a ton of huge things yet, but he has appeared in things that he was basically a buzz actor for Superman for a while, because he has kind of the presence. He just hasn't had an opportunity to really sink his teeth into a character that you've been able to really see him in yet. And he's great. I mean, he looks exactly like Superman, and that was kind of the big talk even before people saw his acting, is they saw pictures of him like, that dude's just Superman walking around. Like, he just looks just like him. He looks like he got ripped right out of a Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster issue. I don't know. And so people were excited from the get-go. So they were really excited when he got cast. And I think he's going to be something really special for this role. And I think he's going to be the perfect version that we need right now. Rachel Brosnahan is playing Lois Lane. Her biggest claim to fame is The Marvelous Miss Maisel. I haven't seen it, but I have seen I've seen clips of her acting and other things. And she is also, for me, she looks like she was ripped right off the page. She looks just like Lois. Nicholas Hoult is playing Lex Luthor. Nicholas Hoult has been in many, many things. He's in the upcoming Nosferatu movie. He was in the X-Men movies as Beast, like X-Men First Class. He's been in, I just look up his IMDb. He's a great actor. He's proven himself multiple times. And he was actually in the running for Batman with Robert Pattinson. He was up for Batman, and then he was up for Superman in this movie as well. And he finally got cast as something, but it was the opposite. It was Lex Luthor. And he looks ripped off the page. I mean, the best looking Lex Luthor I've seen so far in live action, in my opinion. Michael Rosenbaum is a close second, but I think looks-wise, he looks the most like the comic book Lex Luthor. And I think he can bring what we need from that character as well, because the intensity that you see in the trailer at least looks exactly like what it needs to be. So this trailer is, for a teaser, it's kind of long. It's over 2 minutes long. And some of my biggest and most exciting things with this trailer that stuck out to me are Krypto the Superdog, which has never been in a live action Superman movie before, because a lot of people think he's campy. He's from the 1950s, and in those times, the Superman books were pretty campy themselves. Very, very sci-fi and wacky stories that were just kind of ridiculous, like more ridiculous than even just the idea of a Superman. It was just a lot. And, they introduced a lot of super pets. They introduced Krypto, the super dog, Comet, the super horse, Streaky, the cat. Like, they all had superpowers, and they had a million different colors of kryptonite. And it was really out there. And looking back on it now, it's kind of like this 1960s Batman TV show, just super campy, but it has its own kind of place in the history that is really loving. But Krypto was like the one that stuck around the most. And he's essentially, in many versions, I mean, his origin changes, but in many versions, he is Superman's dog on Krypton, and he ends up on Earth too. How he gets there has changed over the years. Same with Supergirl, who she's getting her own movie in the DCU. She was, at one point she was also a Kryptonian that landed, she was a teenager when she was put in her rocket, and she was, the cousin of Superman. And by the time Superman's an adult, she lands and she's younger than him, even though she's technically older, and she remembers Krypton more. And then they changed it to where she was from a place called Argo, which is kind of a sister planet of Krypton. She's a cousin, but she wasn't from, they weren't like that. She had her own kind of set of weaknesses and powers and things. So that's interesting too. But Krypto is usually like a Labrador or like a white Labrador or something like that. And James Gunn changed the breed because it inspired him to, from a rescue dog he had that was the same breed. I think that's part of the reason why he changed Krypto's breed. I think the other reason is because I think James Gunn has an knack for having really lovable animals in his movies, and like Guardians 3 is like so PETA friendly. Like, it's all like about the abuse of animals is horrid, and I'm a big believer in that. But like, it's like he's all about animals, and he does a lot of CG animals. And I think the breed he chose, he can animate a little bit more, I think, than a lab. I just think having, the longer hair and things, I think it just fits how he animates animals. And I think he can make a more compelling, real feeling Krypto that way. That's my theory. In the trailer, Superman's like beaten up at the beginning, bloody, like barely breathing. And he whistles for Krypto, and he says, "Krypto, take me home." And, while that is on its own just adorable and emotional, it also kind of represents Superman, where he's been. And I think it's a way of James Gunn reaching out and kind of being like, let's get Superman home where he belongs, meaning let's get him back to the version of Superman he needs to be right now. And while he's, breathing, and they're showing flashes of all kinds of stuff, we don't get any kind of idea what's going to be happening in this movie. The only thing we're going to be getting is ideas of what it feels like. And there's been a lot of criticism on like the lighting, thinking it's very flat. It's a little too bright in places. It looks like a TV movie. I think it'll look better on screen when you have, the edit. And I think they will do a little more color correction by the time they get to the actual release of the movie. But he's going for a bright, colorful comic book feel. And it almost feels like panels moving. And I see that as well. So that's something we have to wait and see. It didn't bother me as much as a lot of other people, but I understand the criticisms. I just don't agree with them. But the Flashes, you get him and Jonathan Kent, you get him and Lois, you get him as Clark Kent, which his Clark Kent is more of a Christopher Reeve type. He's very kind of gangly and bumbly, but he has a perfect portrayal of looking different than Superman. This is the first time I think, and a lot of people have said this, that you can look at the guy as Clark and you cannot, like, there's no way that dude's Superman. Like, it's not just glasses that are covering him up. He took a lot of ideas from Christopher Reeve and from Frank Quitely, who's an artist on my favorite Superman story of all time, All-Star Superman. He really made Clark slouch and shorter, and his hair's messy and his glasses are there and everything. But and then he drew him as Superman, and he's, standing up straight, and his hair's nice and coiffed, and his double chin doesn't show, and all that, and so that kind of, it's more than just the glasses, and you can see that in Corn Sweat's performance, which is great. And I know James Gunn got a lot of inspiration from All-Star Superman, so it makes sense, and Superman for All Seasons, which is another great book. Yeah, so you see Clark Kent, you see Lex, you see him saving a little girl from all this debris and covering her, and like that looks amazing in slow-mo. You see shots of him. The other touching moment is the little boy in the middle of a war putting up a flag of Superman and whispering Superman, hoping Superman will hear him and save him. But we also get a lot of the general public doesn't really love Superman, and they're really unhappy with him. We don't really know why yet, but from a lot of thoughts and theories, Superman is old school, old fashioned, and he believes that we can do better. And I think there are things he's doing that are, one, he's being manipulated by Lex, and Lex is manipulating his narrative to make him look out to be more as a bad guy. But also I think he is fighting in a world like ours that is so cynical and does not believe in what he's doing, because they're so down and in the dumps, and it's so dark that to see someone like that it's worrisome for a lot of people. And so he's trying to bring humanity back up and dig them back up out of this hole that we've been in. And so you're seeing a lot of conflict there. He's fighting a dragon at one point, or like a big kaiju monster, which is awesome and exciting. This is an established universe. This isn't an origin story of Superman. This is about a year in, I think, from what they've said. But you get some deep cut characters. You get Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, played by Nathan Fillion. A lot of people make fun of him, but he looks just like he did in the comics in the 90s. You're getting Hawk Girl, Mr. Terrific, Metamorpho. Mind you, a lot of these characters haven't even been on the big screen, and we don't know how big of a role they play. But the idea is that James Gunn is like, this is a universe that's already here, and Superman's already here. That's exciting, because I do think people are sick of not the origin necessarily, but having to restart and go, okay, so Superman is here. He's still learning his powers. He has a new suit. He just met Lois. Here's the love triangle between Clark, Superman, and Lois. The Perry White, the editor of the Daily Planet, is getting to him. Oh, he gives Clark a job. Like, we don't have to do that. Everyone knows. Let's just see the adventure he's on, and let's kind of join in like we're reading a comic book. If you go to a comic book store right now, which I suggest you should, go and pick up any issue. Just try to join in and see what happens, right? Like just join in and see if you can follow it. And if you can't, Google the things you don't know and just go, because it's not going to wait for you. There are moments you can jump on, but like, we're not going back to the origin here. Just jump in and read what's happening. And if you don't know a character, look them up. Oh, that's a cool character. Cool. Keep reading. And you'll catch up after a few issues and you'll understand. And that's kind of like this movie, which is exciting. So the kid holding the flag was emotional for me. That's probably the most emotional moment for me. The score, the music in the trailer is the John Williams theme, but it starts an electric guitar. So they turn it rock and roll. And then it's kind of like this modified version of it. That is, it's epic. And the only way I can explain it is I have not felt about a trailer this way about a trailer since Star Wars The Force Awakens teaser trailer came out. And that one did the same exact thing that this movie did for me, or this trailer did for me, which is they used the original music, but they add, the only way I can explain it is like a punch to it. So like in Star Wars, you have the dun 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 dun, and it's just like the dun 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 dun, 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 dun. Like it just hits like, this is what you want. This is what you want. And you know, that's another franchise that, you know, a lot of people are split due to the prequels at the time. You know, they're expecting, episode 1's coming out. Like we're going to have more like Empire Strikes Back, and they're completely different kind of feel of movies. And I think people at that time were clamoring for a classic Star Wars again. Episode 7 came out much later than the rest, and they were like, this is what you want. You know, that trailer, I loved that because it was taking the songs that you love and going, this is what you've been waiting for. This is what you've been hoping will happen. We're here. And like, I don't know, I can't explain. There's just more bang to each end of the note and each in the parts of the theme. And Superman does the same thing where they're using the John Williams theme, but they're making it like, this is what you're looking for. This is different. This is also what I've always wanted in a Superman comic or movie, and it just builds and punches you in the face, and I love it. Someone said that this Superman theme, it's obviously John Williams. It obviously is reminiscent of the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, but it somehow is just different enough that you disassociate it from that franchise as well, or that version. It's its own thing, even though it's the same. They manipulate the notes just enough and the style just enough that it's using the theme in its own way. And I don't just instantly think about those movies. I think about this movie, and it like has had its own identity, even though it's using the same thing. And that's so cool. Like, it's so exciting. You know, I don't think we're ever going to top the John Williams theme to Superman. And every time people try, it's good, but it just doesn't hold up the same way. And you just wish you had the John Williams theme to kind of help tie in the emotions of the movie. And, you know, James Bond found its theme, and they alter it slightly here and there, but you know, it doesn't matter what Bond you're watching or what universe of Bond you're watching. It's the James Bond theme. So why not do that with the Superman theme? I thought that was fantastic. And I think it's great because I don't think it's going to be overused. I don't think it's going to be something that it's just kind of a rehash of the John Williams theme. I think they're going to use it in very pointed points, and it's going to have its own kind of separate score that's also exciting and ties in and is reminiscent. And that's exciting as well. I'm so sorry if you guys are like, oh my God, he's just rambling about Superman. This isn't going to be a normal thing, but it also is. So, you know, there'll be other times that we're going to not have guests, and we're going to just kind of talk and have some more, you know, just me kind of giving my thoughts on things without interviewing. But also I'm sorry, like Superman is so important to me, and it's been a defining thing in my life that I'm going to continue to talk about this as things progress until July. And I hope you guys are excited for that. At some point, I really would like to break down those movies, the Christopher Reeve movies, and even Superman Returns or Man of Steel or Batman v Superman, and really kind of dissect them in their good and bad ways. And I think they're very important movies in general. So I think it fits for the podcast great. With this movie coming out in July, we're going to definitely be doing some kind of countdown. It's definitely going to be something that we come back to frequently, and you know, it may not be ramblings of that movie, but it's going to be like, okay, because this movie's coming out soon, we're going to talk about this movie. And I'm going to recommend some stuff. I'm going to recommend some comic books on top of it. I won't keep you guys, but there's definitely going to be a follow-up to this. If you guys loved this, please let me know in the comments of whatever it is you're listening to this on or watching this on, because I'd love some feedback on it. I felt like I did a very quick explanation of this, where we are in Superman's career, I guess, in movies, but there's way more to it. And, you know, there's some side tangents that we could talk about the 1978 Superman movie and how it was supposed to be that, and Superman 2 were supposed to be one big movie, and how Richard Donner was going to direct both of them, and Richard Donner actually didn't direct the sequel, and why that franchise, that version of the franchise started to crumble a little bit, and what happened, and what's the Richard Donner cut, and we can go into that. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for bearing with me in my first episode without a guest. It'll get easier as it goes on. But I appreciate you guys letting me ramble for a little bit and talk about one of my favorite things. I cannot wait for this movie. I am just completely excited. It's everything I've been waiting for a very long time. And it was scary for a while because it felt like it was never going to happen because of the leadership at Warner Brothers and all kinds of other stuff. It felt like they were putting Superman on the back burner, and to have this quickly turn around and do a 180 to where this is the biggest deal and the most hyped version of Superman I think I've seen in my lifetime so far. Like, that's exciting. And I can't wait to see where it goes. I can't wait to see, will it succeed? Will it become something that, everybody wants and it makes the money it needs and they continue the universe? Or is this unfortunately another situation where I get what I want and the rest of the general public doesn't agree, and it kind of fades into obscurity again, and Superman's down again, and we don't have this James Gunn universe? It could very well happen. It's a lot of pressure on this movie. So we'll just have to wait and see. But regardless, it's exciting. And it's exciting that I thought I may not see another solo Superman movie in a very long time, or even in my lifetime. And we're going to get to see one. I'll be there opening night, and I can't wait. And I hope you guys have a little more understanding now of kind of where we're at and why it's a big deal, at least for me and for many others, and why it's more than just another Superman movie. I will see you guys on the next episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks, guys.